What would you do if a spoiled kid spotted you at your own cabin, ran home crying, and suddenly you had Karen banging on your door with cops on the way? That happened to me, except when the officer arrived. Instead of hauling me off, he stood straight, saluted, and said, "Yes, Major General." And you should have seen the look on Karen's face when she realized who she'd messed with. I'd owned my cabin for years. It was my quiet escape from the chaos of city life, surrounded by pines and tucked away by the lake. It was the kind of place where you could finally breathe. But of course, Karen and her family moved into a vacation home nearby, and peace wasn't in her vocabulary. It all started when her son, a teenage boy with more attitude than sense, wandered onto my land one afternoon. I was stacking firewood when I saw him snooping around the shed. I said, "Hey, kid, this is private property." Instead of apologizing, he sneered, called me a squatter, and bolted. Not 10 minutes later, here came Karen, red-faced, storming up the driveway, shrieking that I was trespassing on her friend's land. I calmly told her, "This cabin has been in my family for decades. I own it outright." But she wasn't listening. Her son had told her some wild story about a stranger lurking in the woods, and now Karen was dialing 911, yelling into the phone that a criminal was on their property. I could have argued, but instead, I sat back on my porch chair and waited, because I knew something she didn't. A few minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. The officer stepped out, and Kara was already running to him, pointing at me and shouting, "Arrest him! He doesn't belong here." The officer walked up slowly, studied me for a moment, then snapped to attention, clicked his heels, and gave me a crisp salute. "Major General," he said firmly. "Didn't know you were in town, sir." Karen's jaw hit the floor. Her son froze like a statue. I simply nodded back, "At ease, officer." See, what Karen didn't know was that I'd spent 30 years in the military, retiring at the rank of Major General. I wasn't just some random guy in a cabin. I was a decorated officer who had led troops overseas and advised at the Pentagon. And in this county, law enforcement knew exactly who I was. The cop turned to Karen and asked, "Ma'am, are you aware this man owns this cabin in this land?" Karen stammered, but my son said, "The officer cut her off. Your son was trespassing. This man is well within his rights. Consider this your warning." Karen's face went redder than a stop sign. Her son tried to mutter something about not knowing, but the damage was done. The officer gave me another nod, told me to call if there were any more disturbances, and drove off. Karen didn't even look at me as she dragged her son away.